My name's Rebecca Wilson, and at 38 years old, I found myself standing at my mother's funeral, dreading the moment my sister Stephanie would arrive. The room buzzed with the low hum of polite condolences, organ music, and distant murmurs. But my head was a sealed box of grief and unfinished war. I kept my eyes fixed on the polished casket, on the photo of Eleanor in her favorite navy dress, smiling like she didn't know her daughters would one day stop speaking. I didn't cry. I hadn't cried since the night she died, though the tears waited like cold water behind a dam. The real storm was coming, and I felt it in my bones. My body tensed as the chapel doors opened behind me. A ripple of whispers. There they were. Stephanie walked in like she hadn't shattered the center of my life. Diamond ring on her finger, satin black dress clinging to her surgically perfect figure, and that same smug smile she wore the day she won. Nathan followed just behind her. His hand sat lightly on the small of her back, territory he once claimed on me. I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. But something in me went very still. I felt it the same way a hawk goes still before the drop. She had no idea who was waiting to meet her. That thought, sharp and cold, calmed me. My husband Zachary stood silently at my side, his hand warm in mine. He knew the story, every jagged, disgraceful inch of it. But what he didn't know was that this moment, this funeral, had become something else for me. Not just mourning, not just memory. It had become the finale to a cruel performance that began 6 years ago with a betrayal so intimate, so surgical. It rewired my faith in love, in family, in myself. But before I tell you how Stephanie's face turned white as a sheet when she saw who I married, I need you to understand how the story really began. Because funerals don't bury the past, they exhume it. 6 years ago, I was 32 and on the verge of everything: career, apartment, future. I was a marketing executive with a fast track title and a closet of designer suits that still smelled like new beginnings. The nights were long and my phone never stopped buzzing, but I liked it. That constant pulse of purpose. What I didn't have yet was someone to share it with. Then came Nathan Reynolds. We met at a charity gala downtown. Candlelight, string quartet, overpriced champagne. He approached with the kind of effortless confidence that makes a room lean toward him. Nathan was sharp-jawed and sharper-tongued, a self-made tech millionaire with a portfolio full of winning bets and a smile built for headlines. Our chemistry was immediate. Talk flowed easy books, travel, old jazz records. It felt cinematic, like meeting was part of some unspoken script. On our first date overlooking Boston Harbor, I called my mom afterward and told her, I think this might be it. It moved fast after that. Vineyard, weekends, symphony box seats, surprise gifts wrapped in gold ribbon. I mistook the pace for passion. 18 months later, he proposed on a yacht under a sky of city lights and soft wind. A 5-carat diamond ring too large. If I'm honest, but dazzling, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. My mother cried with joy. She adored him. Everyone did. Everyone, except the part of me that had started noticing things. The way he lingered near Stephanie at dinner parties. The sparkle in her eyes when she laughed too hard at his jokes. Her arm draped casually on his shoulder, like a dare. Stephanie had always wanted what I had. Even when we were kids, she mimicked me my hobbies, my clothes, my college application. Mom chalked it up to admiration. I knew better. But this was different. When I introduced her to Nathan at a family dinner, I watched her lean in close, too close. I told myself I was imagining things. That Stephanie, despite our tangled history, was just being friendly. she was dating someone else. Then Brian, the pharmaceutical rep. Still, there was something unspoken, a glint in her that I recognized only because I'd worn it before. Want, Mother noticed it too. Just be careful, honey, she warned gently as we cleaned up after the engagement party. You know how your sister can get when you have something she admires. I laughed it off. We're adults now. That's ancient history. But ancient history, it turns out, doesn't stay buried. It waits, patiently, for just the right moment to rise. And 3 months before the wedding, it did. That's when everything began to break. The first cracks weren't loud. They were quiet, almost polite. Nathan started working late. International clients, he said. Typing texts under the table during dinner. Friday nights, once sacred, became placeholders, promises that never quite materialized. His laugh grew distant, his eyes unreadable. Then came the shift, subtle, cruel. He told me my laugh was too loud. The blue dress he once loved now washed me out. The books I read in bed. He said the light kept him awake. I absorbed it like bruises in reverse. No marks, just a dull ache where love used to live. Meanwhile, Stephanie's voice showed up more often on my phone. I just want your wedding to be perfect, she said. Always volunteering to help, always available when I wasn't. I was working late one evening, pushing a campaign over the finish line, when she offered to attend a vendor meeting with Nathan in my place. The two of them choosing floral arrangements. I should have felt grateful. I didn't. One night, doing laundry, I found an unfamiliar scent on Nathan's shirt. Floral! Bold. Not mine. I confronted him gently. His excuse was so polished it almost sparkled. Investor meeting. Rebecca Mills. Big hug goodbye. When I told my friend Allison over coffee the next morning, she smiled, shrugged. Pre-wedding stress. Parker and I nearly broke up before hours, but it didn't feel like stress. It felt like rot. Still, I tried. Spa days, home-cooked meals, silk lingerie in soft gift boxes. Each effort was met with apathy, and then came the cake tasting. Nathan had talked about it for weeks, his favorite part of planning. He said, that morning, he called, last-minute investor lunch. Stephanie can go with you. Stephanie knew his cake preferences. I agreed anyway, swallowing the nausea. The next day, cleaning Nathan's car before a dinner party, I found it a dangling silver earring wedged between the seat and center console, a sapphire glint, my grandmother's gift to Stephanie. I'd seen her wear them at our engagement party. I held it in my hand like a cursed object. That evening, I showed Nathan. His face didn't flinch. I gave her a ride to the florist. Her car was in the shop. When I called Stephanie, she echoed him verbatim. Too perfect. The insomnia started soon after. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, looping fragments of doubt. I lost weight, developed tremors, began seeing a therapist in secret, not ready to admit how broken I felt, not even to myself. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Nathan suggested we postpone. You're not yourself lately, he said, placing blame in my lap like it was a gift. That night, I woke at 3. To an empty bed. His voice, hushed, drifted from the guest room. Not now. She'll hear us. I know. Soon. The next day, I bought his favorite lunch from the deli by my office. A peace offering. Or maybe just a last desperate attempt at hope. I never made it past the receptionist without a fight. But I did make it into his office. And I saw what I wasn't supposed to see. They didn't hear the door open. Nathan stood with his back to me, hands on her waist. Stephanie's arms looped around his neck. Their kiss was unhurried. Practiced, intimate in a way that made the air around me collapse inward. Her skirt was pushed up. His tie hung loose, like all the lies he'd told me. When the door clicked shut behind me, They sprang apart. My world didn't. Nathan recovered first. Always the negotiator. This isn't what it looks like. Stephanie didn't even try. She just looked at me. Defiant. It just happened. I felt nothing. Not rage. Not despair. Just a vacancy, a cold calm that settled in like mist. How long? I asked. Nathan glanced at her, then back at me. Rebecca, let's talk. How long? Stephanie straightened her blouse. Since the engagement party, my breath caught. That was 4 months. 4 months of planning menus, venues, favors, while they carved a future from my back. Nathan took a step behind his desk, distancing himself like he'd just remembered HR protocol. Feelings change. I was going to tell you. After the vows, the honeymoon. When exactly was this story supposed to unravel? His voice slipped into boardroom mode. Practiced, measured. It's not that simple. I dropped the lunch bag. The sandwich hit the floor with a dull thud that sounded too loud in the silence. I trusted you, I said. Both of you. Stephanie had the decency to look away. We tried to fight it, she murmured. But we don't reduce this to a love story. Nathan pressed the intercom button. Margot, please come in. His secretary appeared seconds later, eyes avoiding mine. Please escort Rebecca out. She's upset. I'm escorting myself out. I said. I walked out with the dignity he hadn't earned. I didn't cry until the elevator doors closed. By the time I reached my car, the sobs came in waves, wild and hot and full of disbelief. I didn't drive home. I just sat, keys in the ignition, until my hands stopped shaking long enough to call my mother. She and my father arrived within the hour. I couldn't even open the door. Just unlocked it and curled back onto the bathroom floor. My mother gathered me into her lap like she had when I was small. My father paced, fists clenched, muttering, I'll kill him! But no one died. That was the strangest part. Only something in me did. The next few days blurred. Calls to vendors. Returns, refunds. My mother helped me make excuses. My father handled Nathan's coldly legal email about dividing assets. He wrote it like he was firing a client. When I dropped the engagement ring off at his doorman, I saw Stephanie's car in the garage. She'd already moved in. Our photos were gone. Hers replaced mine. I didn't cry then, either. Just stared. The betrayal kept getting worse. Through mutual friends, I learned how they met behind my back. Secret texts, business trips that were really weekend getaways. Some friends knew, most said nothing. I began to disappear. My skin hung looser. My appetite left me. Sleep became a stranger. The therapist adjusted my meds. Nothing touched the ache. But one thing stayed solid in the fog. My mother. She held me together when I forgot how. And then months later, she broke the silence one afternoon, packing up wedding remnants with quiet hands. You can't stay here, Rebecca, she said. Not in this wreckage. You have to rebuild. But rebuild what? She met my eyes. Whatever's left. Chicago was never the plan. It became the lifeline. When the job opened a lateral move, same firm, new city, I didn't hesitate. I told myself it was about opportunity, about ambition. But the truth, I needed distance, like I needed oxygen. From Boston, from memories, from the scent of Nathan still woven into my curtains. I packed what I could carry. The rest, I donated. Mother helped me fold sweaters into boxes, wrapping fragile things in old newspaper. We didn't talk much, just moved in tandem, like dancers in mourning. You'll call, she asked as I zipped my suitcase. I'll try. I lied. She nodded, tears pressing at the edge of her voice. Try harder. In Chicago, I rented a studio apartment that smelled like fresh paint and loneliness. The skyline became my only witness. I worked 12-hour days, ate takeout at my desk, and avoided the kind of silence that asked questions. At night, I drank wine and stared at old photos on my phone, deleting them one by one like cutting threads from a web I no longer wanted to be in. When I heard Stephanie and Nathan had married via a magazine blurb featuring them outside a courthouse, my engagement ring, now hers, I didn't cry. I drank an entire bottle of red wine and lay on my hardwood floor until the sun rose and my heartbeat slowed. And that morning, I did something that surprised even me. I got up, took a shower, deleted the rest of the photos, blocked their numbers. It didn't erase them, but it made space. That week, I redesigned a pitch deck that won us a major client. My boss started calling me the closer. I worked harder, not for approval, but survival. At least work made sense. There were rules, structure, outcomes. My first real friend in the city was Madison HR director, effortlessly blunt, with a Rolodex of wine bars and a sixth sense for bullshit. You're not sleeping with your grief. She said one night over tacos, "You're dating it." I laughed. It was the first time in months. She invited me to a book club. I went, eventually. Madison kept trying to set me up, but I declined. The thought of anyone touching me of trusting again felt like walking barefoot across glass. Then came San Francisco, a tech conference, 3 days of panels and lukewarm coffee. I was there to network, not connect, definitely not flirt. But Zachary Foster wasn't flirting when we met. He was just kind, polished in an understated way, thoughtful, unassuming. He asked real questions, listened, didn't fill silence for the sake of it. I found myself drawn to the calmness in him, like a harbor after a storm. We exchanged cards, nothing more. But he emailed me the next day. Enjoyed our talk on brand psychology. Coffee tomorrow. I said yes, against every instinct. Over the next 3 months, our communication remained professional. He referred clients. I passed on contacts. Madison teased, "He's into you, and not just for your pitch decks. We're colleagues." I insisted. Colleagues don't look at each other like that. She wasn't wrong. Eventually, Zachary asked me to dinner. I panicked, canceled, rescheduled, canceled again. Finally, I forced myself to go. 20 minutes in, somewhere between favorite books and worst travel stories, I had a full-blown panic attack. My hands shook. Breathing felt like drowning. He didn't flinch. He moved to my side, spoke softly, drove me home. No judgment, no pressure. The next morning, flowers arrived at my office. No roses, just a note. No pressure. Just hoping you're okay. That was the moment I realized maybe kindness wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the bravest thing of all. I called him that night. I told him everything. Not just the facts, but the failure, the shame, the way I had folded into myself after Stephanie and Nathan gutted my trust. How even now? Years later, I wasn't sure if I was healing or just learning to walk around with scar tissue. He didn't interrupt. He didn't console. He listened. Then, slowly, he shared his own wreckage, his wife, his business partner, the divorce that left him hollow and hungry for something real. Broken trust leaves scars, he said. Anyone worth your time will understand that healing isn't linear. That night, I didn't sleep with fear. I slept with stillness. What followed was slow, deliberate. Zachary never pushed. He built safety in the smallest gestures. A coffee left on my desk without fanfare. A playlist curated to match my moods. A willingness to leave when I needed space. And a readiness to stay when I didn't know I did. We grew quietly, like roots under frozen ground. Our fifth date was homemade pasta at his apartment. No crowded restaurants, no loud music, just us, candlelight, and the hum of something steady. I wanted to bolt 3 times before I got there. But when I walked in, his face eased the pressure in my lungs. He asked nothing of me except honesty. And with him, I found I could give that for the first time in years. I felt seen without needing to perform or protect. 1 year after moving to Chicago, I had a life again. Real, textured, mine. Promotion to senior marketing director. A tight circle of friends who didn't know me as the girl who got dumped. A man who held my hand not to claim me, but to anchor me. Then came the turning point. A business dinner. A venture capitalist, laughing over whiskey, said something that lodged like a thorn. Nathan Reynolds. Oh, yeah. He and Foster had quite the pissing contest in angel investing years ago. Foster won. Reynolds crashed. I blinked. Foster. I repeated. Zachary Foster. Your guy, right? He backed Enotech. Nathan bet on CompuServe. Guess who got acquired? The world tipped. Slightly. Not in fear, not in panic, but in recognition. That name, that timing, that symmetry. Later, I asked Zachary directly. He didn't flinch. I knew who you were. Not the details, but I knew you were engaged to Nathan. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to be another shadow from your past. I wanted you to know me before you knew that. I stared at him, this man who had never once used my pain for leverage. And suddenly, it all made sense. The universe hadn't brought Zachary to me as some consolation prize. It had given me someone who had watched Nathan rise, gamble, and lose. Someone who had seen the man behind the magazine covers before I did. And yet, Zachary never gloated, never took pride in Nathan's failure. But me, a part of me small, dark, unrepentant, savored it. Not because I wanted revenge in the traditional sense, but because, for once, the man who destroyed me wasn't winning. He wasn't untouchable. And he sure as hell wasn't Zachary. It started as a flicker. Not a plan, not even a desire. Just a thought that settled into my chest and refused to leave. What if the best revenge was simply being happy? Not just functioning, not just surviving, but thriving, loved, chosen again, not out of convenience or competition, but out of depth. Still, I couldn't help it. The symmetry gnawed at me. Nathan had taken so much. My sister, my trust, my future. Now, without ever lifting a finger, I had something he couldn't buy or charm or manipulate. Zachary. And not just Zachary. A life that was real. I began to wonder what would happen if they saw it. If Stephanie's sharp little world, built on conquest and curated Instagram captions, collided with mine. Not a confrontation, not a scene, just exposure, like light flooding a dark corner. So when the cancer came back and my mother called, voice thin and steady, I knew I had to go home. I had to face what was left behind. Zachary booked the flights. We arrived in Boston within 48 hours. He didn't ask if I wanted him there. He simply came. At the hospital, my father looked like half a man, aged by months of fear. My mother, pale and hollow-eyed, gripped my hand with a smile that still held strength. "I'm not afraid of dying," she said one night. "I'm afraid of leaving you two still broken." I said nothing. 3 days later, she passed peaceful. Yes, but peace didn't follow. I made the call to Stephanie. Her voice cracked when I told her. "I'll be there in an hour," she said. And she was. No fanfare, no diamonds, just a plain black coat and red eyes. We hugged awkward, brittle, then dove into logistics. Casket, flowers, eulogies. Our words never touched the wound. The morning of the funeral, I stood in my childhood bedroom, slipping on a black dress I hadn't worn since the last charity gala I attended with Nathan. Funny how grief and glamour sometimes borrow the same wardrobe. Downstairs, Zachary waited. You don't have to do anything today except breathe, he said, hands on my shoulders. But I did have to do something. I had to stand in the same room as the two people who once gutted me, not as their victim, as their equal. No, they're better. At the funeral home, the crowd blurred. My father's grip on my arm was the only thing grounding me until the hush fell. They had arrived, Stephanie and Nathan. Whispers followed them down the aisle. I felt the eyes on me, heard the collective inhale as they reached the front row. Rebecca, Stephanie said with forced warmth. Yes, I replied. Nathan offered a stiff nod. Sorry for your loss? Zachary had stepped away briefly to speak with the director. I was momentarily alone when Stephanie gestured toward the side room. I need a word. I hesitated, then followed. Inside the small private room, she closed the door and turned to me. Her face was drawn, lips tight, but her eyes held the same spark of competition I remembered too well. You look thin, she said, eyeing me. Grief does that. She fiddled with her ring, my ring, and then launched into a list. Summer home on Cape Cod, new acquisitions, plans for a nursery. Every syllable was designed to provoke envy, but there was nothing left in me to envy her. You always did need an audience, I said quietly. And then I called Zachary in. Have you met my husband? The moment her face froze, I felt it the click of something long overdue. Nathan appeared behind her. His eyes met Zachary's, and the blood drained from his face. Foster, he breathed. Zachary didn't smile. Reynolds. That's when I realized revenge doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in posture, in the look a man gives another when he knows exactly how and when he beat him. Nathan blinked, grasping for composure. You too are married. 2 wonderful years now, I answered, slipping my hand into Zachary's. Stephanie's lips parted. Her gaze moved between us like trying to make sense of a language she never learned. Zachary, Foster, she repeated slowly, voice thinning. Zachary gave a polite nod. The same. Rebecca and I met at a tech conference in San Francisco. I could almost hear the machinery whirring behind Nathan's eyes. Calculation, regret, panic. We should catch up sometime, he said, attempting the old polished charm. I've been meaning to reach out about my schedule's full, Zachary replied. Calm, final. Stephanie stood still, her diamond ring suddenly looking heavier on her finger. Nathan's hand hovered behind her back, but she stepped forward and said, almost too quietly, excuse me. We returned to the main room as the funeral director announced the service would begin shortly. Eyes followed us, whispers following them. I could feel the energy shift. Not hostility, something softer. Curiosity laced with recognition. People saw what they hadn't seen before. And for once, I didn't care who they believed. I had Zachary's hand in mine. But peace never arrives unchallenged. As we took our seats, my father clutched his chest, his face twisted, eyes glassy. Dad, I gasped, grabbing him as he slumped slightly forward. Zachary was already on his feet, calling for help. The funeral paused as guests murmured in alarm. A doctor in the room assessed him quickly. It's likely stress, she said gently. Not a heart attack, but he needs rest. Stephanie followed us into the private room, panic evident in her posture. Her mask had cracked. Is he okay? She asked. Should we call an ambulance? There was no smugness in her voice, no subtext, just a daughter, terrified of losing another parent. He's stable, I said, just overwhelmed. We sat in uneasy silence, Stephanie on one end of the room, me on the other. The distance between us was measured in years, not feet. When our father insisted the service continue, we returned to the chapel. I gave the eulogy. My voice trembled but held. I spoke of my mother's strength, her quiet wisdom, her endless capacity to love. I didn't mention the fractures she'd tried to heal, but I felt them behind every word. When I stepped down, Stephanie surprised everyone by rising to speak. She made it 3 sentences before her voice broke, tears overtaking her. She looked lost, like the girl who once crawled into my bed after nightmares and asked me to hold her hand. Without thinking, I stood, walked to her, placed a hand on her back. "It's okay," I whispered. "Take your time." She nodded, then finished her tribute stories from our childhood. Details only we would remember. The room softened. Even Nathan looked away, as if ashamed to be seen. At the cemetery, rain began to fall, a thin drizzle, cool and constant. We watched as our mother's casket was lowered. I placed a rose on top, whispering a thank you only she would hear. Nathan stood apart, checking his watch. Stephanie didn't move. She stood beside our father, letting him lean on her. Later, at the reception, Nathan drank. He didn't speak to Zachary once. I caught snatches of conversation from colleagues, mentions of failed ventures, botched acquisitions. The mask was slipping. And Stephanie, she moved through the house like a shadow, distant, somber, stripped of her usual armor. At one point, I looked up from a conversation and saw her watching me, not with envy, not with competition, with something closer to regret. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom and reread my mother's journal. The final entry haunted me. "My greatest regret is leaving with my girls still estranged." I closed the journal, breathing deep. Tomorrow, I would stay. Zachary would return to Chicago, and Stephanie, whether she knew it or not, would come to me, not for forgiveness, but for truth. The doorbell rang just after 5. I opened it slowly. Uncertain, Stephanie stood alone on the porch, hair pulled back, her coat damp from the drizzle. No sign of Nathan's car, no diamond sparkle today. She looked small, not physically, but in presence, like she had shrunk from her own reflection. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. In the kitchen, I made coffee while she sat at the old oak table where we used to do homework and argue over cereal boxes. The air between us was thick, quiet. It pulsed with things unsaid. "Where's Nathan?" I asked, setting a mug in front of her. "At home. He doesn't know I'm here." I waited. I told him I needed space. After the funeral, she wrapped her hands around the mug, but didn't drink. I noticed how still she was, as if movement might undo her. "I'm sorry," she said. The words didn't land the way they used to, like needles or sugar. They landed like weight. "I'm sorry about yesterday. What I said. It was cruel. I know that. I didn't come here to fight." I nodded, but didn't speak. The silence invited more. I saw Mom's journal. Dad showed it to me. Her last wish? Stephanie trailed off, eyes glassy. She just wanted us to make peace. "I found it too," I said. "But reconciliation isn't just geography. Stephanie, it's honesty." She inhaled sharply, like the truth might be painful. "I'm miserable." "Rebecca?" It spilled out of her like water breaking a dam. "I've been miserable since the wedding." Nathan changed. Or maybe he was always like that, and I just didn't want to see it. Controlling, cold, distant. His business is in shambles. Everything, the house, the cars, the vacations, it's all debt. We live in a glass castle built on nothing. She looked at me then, and her eyes were unguarded for the first time in years. "He checks my phone, my spending, tracks what I do and when. I'm not his wife. I'm a brand extension. Why stay?" I asked, even though part of me already knew. Shame, she whispered. How do I admit that I destroyed my sister's life for something that turned out to be a lie? And there's the prenup. If I leave, I get nothing. I traded my soul for a lifestyle I can't even afford to leave. I pushed the leather journal across the table. She didn't touch it, just stared. You should read it all, I said. And when she finally did, her tears came silent, slow, steady. The kind that can't be wiped away. She knew. Stephanie said softly, Mom always knew. I nodded. She saw through everything. I hated myself every time she spoke your name. Every time she shared something, you'd done your promotion, your new clients, your apartment, I smiled. But inside, I broke because I knew what I took from you. She swallowed hard, eyes rimmed red. I'm leaving him. I've been consulting a lawyer in secret. He doesn't know yet. I'm going to file, find work again, get a place of my own, start over. And there it was. Not a request for absolution, not a plea, just truth. Honest, cracked, bleeding. For the first time, I believed her. And for the first time, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt conflicted. This woman had dismantled me piece by piece. And yet now she sat before me. Just another casualty of Nathan's charm turned poison. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I don't even deserve it, but I needed to tell you the truth before I destroy my life again. This time, by choice. We spent hours that afternoon going through Mother's things. Her scarves, her cookbooks, old photo albums. We laughed once about the time she tried to sew matching Halloween costumes and failed spectacularly. It wasn't healing. Not fully, but something cracked open. As Stephanie prepared to leave, she turned to me. What about you? I'm going back to Chicago, I said. My life is there, with Zachary. She nodded. You seem happy. I am. She paused. I'm glad. One of us should be. We hugged, briefly, unevenly. Not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of a bridge. Chicago welcomed me back like it had been waiting. Zachary met me at the gate, wrapping me in an embrace that said, You're safe now, without needing words. We drove home in comfortable silence, our hands intertwined on the console, the city lights softening around us like the final scene of a long, quiet film. I settled back into my life with him, our brownstone, my work, the rhythm we had built, a life not of performance, but partnership. We cooked together. We fought sometimes, but kindly. We made room for each other's scars. We planned without fear. 6 months after the funeral, I stood in our bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test that blinked positive. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. After years of trying, years of wondering if I'd ever be whole enough to carry life inside me, it had happened. And though I wished my mother could have been there to see it, I felt her with me, especially when I pressed a hand to my stomach and whispered, I'm ready. Zachary cried when I told him, held me like he was holding the miracle itself. Stephanie called 2 weeks later, a cautious, quiet check-in. She had filed for divorce, moved into a modest apartment on the other side of Boston, started working part-time at a small marketing firm. The same circles that once invited her to galas now whispered behind her back. She didn't complain, just mentioned it with a weary sort of acceptance. Gossip's a small price to pay for freedom, she said. We spoke. Not often, but regularly. The calls were still laced with awkwardness, but they no longer bled. She asked about the baby. I told her I was waiting until the second trimester to share the news more widely. I'm happy for you, she said, and for the first time, I believed her. It's strange how betrayal once felt like a permanent fracture, but now it's just part of the architecture, a scar. Yes, but one that tells a story I'm no longer ashamed of. Nathan. I haven't seen him since the funeral. Rumors say his business is crumbling, stretched thin by acquisitions he couldn't hold together. The house in Beacon Hill is allegedly on the market. I don't care enough to check, because he's no longer the villain in my story. He's just a man I once thought I loved, Stephanie. She's no longer the enemy either. Not quite the sister I had. Not yet the one I might have again. But something in between. A woman learning to crawl from her own wreckage, just as I once did. Forgiveness is slow, but I understand now it was never for them. It was for me to breathe, to sleep without clenching my fists, to build a life that doesn't look like a fortress, but like a home. As I sat one afternoon in the nursery, Zachary, painting the walls, a soft green, I thought of all the things I would teach this child. That love should be chosen, not earned. That grief doesn't define you. That betrayal isn't the end. Because it wasn't for me. Losing Nathan had felt like the death of my future. But it was really just the death of a version of me that needed to die so another could be born. One who stood taller, loved deeper, trusted again, with Zachary, with myself, with time. The scars remain. But they're not wounds anymore. They're stories. Mean. Have you ever experienced a painful loss that eventually led you to something better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please subscribe and share with someone who might need to hear. That pain doesn't get the final word in their story. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most difficult chapters lead to the most beautiful endings. Leave a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and unexpected blessings.